You are Locked On Cougs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Over at Supply House, because when the opening whistle blows on a new repair and you get your crew moving forward to Supply House, you can order today and see the parts on your doorstep tomorrow. Over 280, I can't, oh my God, 280,000 different plumbing, HVAC, and electrical items from the most trusted brands in the business. Real-time inventory and honest lead times keep you from punting on projects, while their industry-leading customer service always has your blind side covered. If you need parts for a project, Supply House does have next-day delivery, which is quite a game changer because there's always a thing you didn't think about you needing or you didn't know you were going to need. They've got it for you and get to the next day. Join the Trade Master program for free today and score serious perks like priority shipping, low prices, and a dedicated support line. Visit supplyhouse.com to sign up for free. Use promo code SHCollege5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Real people, real service. Parker Ainsworth, Locked On Coogs here. And at the worry of stepping on Mountaineer Paul's toes over West Virginia, I saw some news about the Big 12 on Tuesday that upset me. This would make like 3 references to West Virginia in the last 10 days, which is not something that was on my bingo card for August. But the SEC and the Big 12 seem to be at it again. And I, as a Big 12 conference member, just can't seem to let this stand. So the SEC, if you were living under a rock and missed it, said that they're going to play 9 conference games starting the 2026 season. And this is after some peer pressure from other Power 4 leagues, including the Big 12, to say that, frankly, 8 was not sufficient, right? That playing 9 Big 12 games and 1 at least Power 4 non-conference game was more challenging than playing 8 conference games and 1 or 2 non-conference Power 4 games, as the SEC had been doing. There were no requirements on playing 2. Some places were just playing 1, which meant you were playing less Power 4 opponents than schools and other leagues were, right? The SEC argument, which had very little credence to me, but they tried to argue that the SEC was more challenging, and so that playing 8 conference games and 9 total P4 games was the same as playing the 10 P4 games, and that's just not true. The other thing that didn't seem to ever strike me as correct on that was like, but you're playing Mercer or whomever in like November, which means that you're getting kind of a little bit of a break late in the season. That's not a bye week, but is a break, right? And so they've added 9 games, and the first casualty of scheduling in that is that Alabama has decided to remove their game against West Virginia. And they had a home and home schedule for 2026, 2027. Admittedly, I think part of the fun in this was going to be, Nick Saban's Alabama versus his home state of West Virginia, and that's not going to be the case anymore. But Alabama has decided that in 2026 and 2027, they're not going to play West Virginia. In 2027, Alabama does currently have Florida State on their schedule, and in 2028, they have a home and home starting with Ohio State. They have Oklahoma State later in the schedule too. Home and home with them is scheduled right now to start in 2029, I believe. And they've got these back and forth with Notre Dame and stuff like that. But what's interesting is that they decided that this home and home with West Virginia, if they're going to add another SEC game, they just can't also stand to play Big 12's West Virginia, right? And the default response from the SEC school here, a leader of the SEC at that in Alabama, was that when forced to play 9 conference games, they just couldn't stand to potentially play an 11th Power 4 game. That was going to be too much, just too much. And it feels to me like that's a gigantic admission. It's an admission that the home and home with West Virginia, Oklahoma State, Arizona, whom they all have scheduled in the future. I guess West Virginia just canceled, but at Alabama, they have Oklahoma and Arizona on their future schedules. It feels like an admission that those games are going to be as challenging as the SEC games you're now replacing them with. Right now, it's blind. You don't know if you're playing Mississippi State or Georgia, but theoretically, you are playing another SEC game, and they're replacing those Big 12 games that they've already done for 2026 and Alabama with East Carolina. That's their replacement. That's what they're going with there. And Alabama strikes me as interesting in that they went first, but they are not going to be the only program that does this in the SEC. I've got my own eyes on Houston playing LSU in 2027 and Oklahoma in 2028 as potential moments here. Now, LSU does not have currently another Power 4 opponent in 2027, and Oklahoma does not have currently another Power 4 opponent in 2028. So that probably just means they cancel and they're going to have to come up with other excuses besides having too many Power 4 games all of a sudden. But I think that it's bogus. I also think that it admits that the conferences are closer than the SEC when it wants to act like when it goes to the arguments for TV deals. And I also think that this presents a potential big giant danger. The real challenge is going to be if shrinking the amount of out-of-conference Power 4 opponents the SEC opts to play means that they only play a handful of brands. Ohio State's, Michigan's, couple of top Big Ten teams, Florida State, the national brand, and local. If you're Florida or Mississippi's not far, right? Alabama's not far, right? Georgia's not far from Florida State, right? Clemson for South Carolina, right? Or whatever. They've got to play that every year. And I feel like a problem that could arise from this down the road is we already know that when people are making these decisions, because people are ultimately the ones making decisions in the college football playoff committee, they put some gigantic value on the SEC, even though we've seen time and time again that value doesn't always play out like they think it does. They put a gigantic value on it. And so if they're now going to put that value on it, and you see SEC schools play less and less out of conference opponents, I don't mean to say that the taking them to 9 games backfired, because I think ultimately that was a bare minimum. I just start to lean into more of the Kalani Sitake camp. BYU's head coach at Big 12 Media Day said that the Power 4 should play only Power 4 games. It should be your 9 conference games and then 3 non-conference Power 4 games. That's what's best for the sport and best for competition. And I don't want the Big 12 to mandate or go to that on their own, because I think then you'll start seeing Big 12 teams accumulate losses, and those losses will be decontextualized, and a 9-3 Big 12 team that did not play a non-Power 4 opponent will be considered less than a 10-2 SEC team that played 3 non-Power 4 opponents or whatever, right? Like I don't want to go to that on our own as a Big 12 conference. And I certainly don't want Houston to be losing out on their SEC future games either because the SEC decides to cancel theirs. But I just feel like this is a sign of something to come that might not be good for college football, and it'd be another way in which this Southeastern Conference is trying to ruin the sport. Now we go back and forth between blaming the Big Ten for that or blaming the SEC for that or whatever, but it does feel like they're trying to steer the sport towards what makes them the most money and not what makes it the best product. And while that's probably the way it's always been, and I can see it right in the comment right now, that doesn't make it suck any less. It just doesn't. And ultimately, it's where we're at. Now, last episode, we gave you a trivia question about how many players and coaches have been inducted to the College Football Hall of Fame from the University of Houston. I've got down 12 players and 3 coaches for a total of 15 Houston Cougars in the College Football Hall of Fame. With Houston and Stephen F. Austin playing on Thursday night, I was interested in what the most points scored was in an opener, because Houston has not opened up with an FCS team all that often. My question for you is, what is the number? Bonus credit if you can figure out who the team was, what year it was, etc. What is the number for the most points Houston has scored in a football opener? Tell us in the comments down below what you think that trivia question is. We'll be answering it on the next episode, which will be a preview, getting ready for Houston and Stephen of Austin. So make sure you hit subscribe and hit the bell so you know when that goes live. Locked On Cougs, primer the Locked On Podcast Network. That means your team every day. Go Cougs. I should also point out we're going to be live post-game. Yeah, we're going to be live post-game after the game on Thursday, so check us out there too. All right, bye.